Every year since 1989, the Library of Congress has selected 25 films to add to the National Film Registry. The criteria? The films must be culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant.
Each week on You're Missing Out, we take a look at one of these films to try and get to the heart of why they were selected and why they still matter.
This week, Kenny Neibart returns to the show for 1945's Detour.
Our guest today is our best friend, Kenny Neibart.
He very much is our best friend.
Kenny Neibart.
Nice to be back with my
returns to the
besties.
show. Absolutely. Kenny Neibart is here to talk about Detour. Kenny, thank you so much for doing this. You have been on every season of our show, and we hope to keep having you on every season of our show. Though, peek behind the curtain, considering how many times we had to move this recording for various scheduling issues here and there, you may end up doing a season 5 movie on season 10, just because we'll have to keep kicking it down the road. Who the heck knows?
Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
No, that's all good.
That's fine.
No good reason, except for not prioritizing this.
Hey, it's fine.
No.
I don't prioritize this.
No, it what always comes up, particularly because you guys are East Coast and I'm West Coast. 5 o'clock is a very doable hour for me, which is what we're doing now.
Mm-hmm.
But anytime after, I'm into dinners and I'm into bath time and bedtime, and that's hard to get out of. So I'm happy that we fit us into this 5 o'clock, and I feel great about this. And I love you guys, and I will be on every season that I am alive for.
We are so.
I'm just so happy that we can be the exclusive Kenny Neibart podcast hub for the foreseeable future. Anytime you need a Kenny Neibart podcast, we'll be your go-to once a year. Kenny Neibart
you
makes
want
his
these
grand
dulcet
return.
Tones. Well, you guys are. I don't know if you're aware, but I did do the Scorsese Screen Draft
Yes.
Episode with Phil and Emily.
Mm-hmm.
Emily St. James from my former podcast. And I am a pariah now because after being vetoed 4 times at number 29, I played The Age of Innocence. And the entire internet despises me. Despises me.
I would 100% pull a move like that if they vetoed me 4 times.
And the movies I have my Scorsese opinions. I believe you know some of them. But I wasn't trying. I played The Departed at 30. I was vetoed by the patrons. That was inevitable. That was just so I can get my rant out. I played fucking Stone's documentary that sucks.
Shine a Light.
Shine a Light. It's a terrible, terrible piece of shit.
I like that.
And then I played New York. Then I played New York at 29. I am not trying to burn the world down by playing New York at 29. In fact,
It's where it should be.
I'm trying to keep the world intact, right?
Yeah.
That got vetoed. At that point, man, then my shit gets a little different than everyone's shit. I don't like Shutter Island. I don't like Passion of the Christ. I don't like Passion of the Christ. Last Temptation of Christ. I don't understand honestly how a non-Catholic could like that movie. But those got vetoed too. And then I played fucking Age of Innocence, which I regret. I regret. But
don't regret it.
Really?
Burn it down.
There are 2 Dylan documentaries that aren't that great. I could have been a little more.
It was Boxcar Bertha sitting there,
which I don't dislike.
I'm just saying,
Boxcar Bertha. Well, the one I really like. And sorry to do this on your podcast, but the one I really was going to protect to death is Who's That Knocking at My Door.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think I really needed to protect it to death. But Boxcar Bertha, I don't know, man. They fucking crucify a guy. It's pretty cool. Okay, that's it. Haven't been on podcasts since. The internet no longer loves me. That's why I no longer engage with the internet. But I love you guys. Can't wait to talk about a great movie, I think, in Detour, and maybe some other bad movies.
Well, I think it's all beautiful how this ties together because We also, at the start of this episode, because of your screen drafts, we also had a man going into an elaborate story defending his actions that anybody else would think are heinous. I think that's nice. It all
That's
ties
right.
together. You're
Oh,
sitting there.
You know what?
This is why
I
Kenny's
didn't.
Kenny.
I didn't mean to strangle Age of Innocence with the telephone cord. It just happened. It's very nice.
That I really could relate to him. I truly, I think like that and the other, which I'm sure we'll talk about, but the other death in the movie that was an accident. That's how I feel in my life all the time. I feel like I feel like, don't you understand? I had nothing to do with this man falling out of a car and hitting his head on a rock. And they're like, nope, you're a murderer. I'm not a murderer. I'm not a murderer. And then I have to run away and try to sell my car and wind up with the world's most annoying evil woman and all this stuff. I really do think this is a fantastic film. How do you guys?
So let's.
What do you guys think?
I was going to ask why you settled on Detour, but that's a good enough reason right there.
No, I didn't know anything about it.
Really?
You gave me the list. I didn't know anything about it. You gave me the list, and I looked them up, and this seemed frankly, the most modern.
Mm-hmm.
And the least like. You gave me a great movie last time, and I was a fugitive from a chain gang, which I loved, and also felt like a little bit of a glimpse into a seedier side of Hollywood back then. This wasn't really a Hollywood movie, Detour, but still, it was a movie that was it was a theatrical movie. It was a movie people saw. It was a movie that was reviewed, and it doesn't feel like even other film noirs.
Yeah.
From the time. So I really, even just from the description and the stills I saw when I was trying to choose it. So I really was into that, into doing a movie that is kind of unlike, the films that generally get into the library, which are, to me, and you guys are the experts, I'm not, but they're either movies that have already been knighted, or movies that are small but really important and need to kind of be elevated. This movie doesn't seem that fucking important. It's just great.
It's interesting you say that, because I think, and then we'll get into when we first saw it and have you, but one of the things that's interesting about this year of the registry in particular, about year 4, is that the very first year, which when you came on for that, Kenny, you were here talking High Noon, right?
Yes. Already knighted movie.
Yeah. The very first year, it's all what you're saying, already knighted movies, right? The very first year was just the canonical classics, right? The only one that doesn't necessarily fit that description is The Nook of the North, in that it's not like generally known to the public, but that's the documentary, right? That's,
but it kind of was, right?
Yeah.
Like it kind of, forget even the public.
Yeah.
It was well known as a important film.
So the first,
all right.
I'm going to say the first year is that. The second year, you start to see them branch out a little bit and go like, okay, let's also make sure we get Meshes of the Afternoon in here, right? Let's get some foundational films that the public may not know. Year 3 does some of that too, with like a David Holzman's Diary and things like that. But this year in particular, I think you really start to see them stretch the bounds of the law that was created to create the National Film Registry, right? Says the films need to be very broad. It just says culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant, right? It just needs to be one of those 3 very broad criteria. So this year, you really start to see them go, okay, instead of just making this, let's pick 25 popular movies, right? You start to see them go like, well, it's really important that we get, we just record an episode on Dog Star Man, the Stan Brakhage movie, right? Now that's an important film, but it's not a popular film, and it's also not a populist film. And it's more just the idea of like, well, we have to have a Stan Brakhage in here. Like, we have to preserve this style of film. And with Detour, there's the element of like, this is, Roger Ebert called it the quintessential Poverty Row film, right? Yeah. It's not just in here, or, we're doing later this season, we're doing Salt of the Earth, right? Now, is anybody watching Salt of the Earth today? No.
If you are preparing for a screen drafts about Union films, you may watch Salt of the Earth. So I'm familiar with that. familiar with Salt of the Earth.
But it's like,
but yeah, no, of course not. Of course
it's
not.
in because, but it's the idea of like, well, this is an interesting film. This is an important film to preserve from the stance of like the circumstances of how it was made and what it represents, right? And especially now, every year we do these reactions to the inductees. And so often now it's the case of like, yeah, some of them are the popular films, right? Some of them are, this year was, Terminator 2 or Nightmare Before Christmas, or Home Alone. But then you also get ones where it's like, well, we just understand it is important to, we have the Bohulano family film collection or Cab Calloway's home movies, or things where it's like, well, this is just important to preserve. And I think Detour is very interesting because, and this will just feed into mine, and then Tom, you can talk about when you first saw it, but the first time I saw Detour was when I first started getting interested in the National Film Registry, which was a number of years ago. And I was just so intrigued. But at the time that I was looking at that list, the time I was looking at it, I was under the impression still that this was like an AFI style list, right? Like well, these are the greatest movies ever made, and like these are just crackerjack. And so I was like, oh, Detour. Okay, I've never heard of this. It's on YouTube because it's public domain. It's like 70 minutes. I will watch it on my commute into work. And I did. And I thought it sucked. I've come around on this film quite a bit, right? Because I think that, we talked about this off mic, but, the objective of our show, we always go into it with the idea of like, if it's in the registry, it was deemed important by very intelligent people. And if I watch it, or if any of us watch any of these films and our gut reaction is, well, this is stupid and sucks, well, our job on this show is to keep reassessing that until we can figure out why it was deemed significant, rather than think, I'm smarter than the National Film Preservation Board, And I've come to appreciate it, but I didn't realize necessarily that, like, right, part of the reason Detour in particular gets in is not because it's a Best Picture worthy, pristine, perfect movie, but rather, like, in part at least, like, this is the quintessential Poverty Row movie. And you see the moves this year in the fourth year of the registry to go, we need to preserve. Essentially, like, Detour is the first real move to go, let's honor the B movie. Let's honor the movie that film fans discovered probably on cable or on the Saturday morning movie or at a dollar drive-in. And there is something kind of, Kenny, you're marking on like what kind of films get in the registry. There is something very cool, regardless of what one might think of the quality one way or the other. I'm not the biggest film noir guy in general, but like there's something very cool about the fact that unlike anywhere else, the National Film Registry is like, there is validity to the sci-fi monster pictures and the, Poverty Row noirs and the crappy old cartoons that you would play on a Saturday morning. Like, there's validity to this. This mattered too, which I think is super cool. But Tom, so that was my first time seeing it. It was a number of years ago. When was your first time seeing Detour? I genuinely have no idea.
My first time seeing it was in September when we were...
Okay.
When the plan was like, oh, well, let's try to watch as many of the movies for next season as we can so we get a better idea how to plan the season out, blah, blah, blah. Tried that for a few movies, then kind of just got distracted with other movies and never went back to doing that. So, that's usually how my brain works. I had to watch some Italian horror movies, whatever.
I'm sorry, Tim, I will just say this really quickly. I was talking about you to a mutual friend of ours, past guest on the show, and I believe I made some comment about like, oh, well, what does Tom think about the action movie? I'm like, I don't think he's watched it yet because he spends his time watching Kino Lorber Blu-rays of movies that are just called like 10 Hats for a Mule or something. And I don't know why I spit that out. But
10 hats for a mule.
It's like, really, that is, one day you're going to hold up a Blu-ray. It's like, yeah, 10 hats for a mule. Yeah. Clint Eastwood's cousin stars in it. Yeah. It was made in Italy. Like, these are just the things that you watch. It's 10 hats for... He pulls...
just for example, here's just one of the stacks. A Wrong Turn movie.
Okay.
I think it's Wrong Turn 7. Wrong Turns 1, 2, and 3.
This was
The
the
boxer.
closest to him.
Yeah.
Oh, the boxer.
The passenger.
Hey, Antonioni.
Are most of these unopened?
Yeah. These are ones I'm
Okay,
like I want
all
to
right.
watch. I liked it.
Kuntoon.
Hey, Marty.
Our favorite Sopranos line. We quote it constantly.
It's so good. By the way, wrote for it very hard on the Scorsese draft.
There
I think
we
it's
go.
a great film.
But you also put it at number 29. You just kept adding them.
No, couldn't do. No, wait. What actually wound up there? Fuck, I can't even remember. Something everybody loves. I mean, I fucking put like Goodfellas. I don't know what I wound up putting there. But
How about this? Box set of spaghetti westerns.
Yes, 10 Hats for a Mule is in there. Look for it.
With titles such as Massacre Time, My Name is Picos, Banditos, and God Said to Cain. I mean, come on, how can I not watch movies with those titles?
Okay, so then don't make fun of 10 Hats for a Mule because it's eerily close to those.
Everyone's gonna be pissed off. I wound up with The Irishman there. It was not my best work.
Okay, so Tom, you saw Detour in September. The only reason I ask that, right, is because, and I'm going to do that thing that our listenership really loves, which is I'm going to talk about our time in film school, their favorite thing. When we were in college. Oh,
hey, they choose to listen to this show. I mean, this is that. That's a them problem, not a me problem.
When we were in college, there was one class that I didn't take that I think everybody else in our year was in, which was a full in-depth film noir class. I had a couple of credits where I could skip a class, and at the time I was just like, I want to focus on other things, and I'm not a big film noir guy. I'm still not. And I just ended up taking that class. And I feel like truly me missing that film noir class felt like the equivalent of like when I was in second grade and I went to the bathroom when the teacher taught multiplication. And when I came back, I was like, oh, I'm screwed. Math is gone for me forever now. I'm always going to be behind now. It's like that.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure. Like, I know y'all watched like Pick Up on South Street and stuff, but I wasn't sure if Detour was in that.
I don't think I was in that class.
I mean, you also could have been and just slept through it.
No, because like
many times back then.
Because I didn't see Pick Up, like if that was a movie in that they showed in that class, I didn't see it. So I don't think I was in that class. It must have been one of those things where I did that class like year 2 instead of year 1 or whatever. Yeah. I don't know. But
that's why I was
that actually
yeah.
That probably would have been like when if you were in that class, that would have been like when I had to do the French New Wave class and I was just miserable the whole fucking time and I only liked one movie the whole thing, and it surprised My Night at Maud's.
All right.
Yeah.
I gotta live my truth, bro. Somehow got a discussion about the French Connection going after that movie with the teacher, and he's like, I do think that scene inspired Friedkin with the car chase in French Connection. I'm like, hell yeah, he did. Yeah, we're doing this. I think
it's critically important that we all live our truth. And I don't believe most people on film podcasts are.
They're not. No.
I deeply don't believe that.
I don't believe either.
I also think, and sorry to take sorry to go on a tangent. I also think that it's okay, like what you said, Mike, to not really love a genre. I feel this intense pressure to love every genre equally and to give every genre its due. Listeners, my Departed podcast know that not a podcast about the Departed, but my podcast that is really Departed, know that I will not watch a spy movie if it takes place in Europe. Period. End of story. Will not watch. They
won't
bore me to tears. Won't do it. Will not go there. So I think that's okay. And I wish people were a little more upfront about, I don't know, having fucking like different tastes from everybody else.
Well, that's the thing we talk about all the time is I genuinely think like a vast majority of like film people, whether you want to say film Twitter or just like the film sphere, like whatever. Sure. If you go to like Alamo or, the New Bev or whatever, and those people that go to those places. I think a lot of people aren't movie fans. I think they're fans of the movies they like, and they try to pass themselves off as we like movies, but then they're not honest about that. They don't like this kind of movie or this kind of movie, or we only like this kind of movie. And listen, I try to watch and appreciate everything. There's just so much shit that I want to be able to appreciate everything. But there's going to be things that bounce off of me. I said it's still to this day. French New Wave, Godard, I can't do it. I'm getting better with musicals, but it's not always the first thing that comes to mind when I'm like, what should I watch tonight? A musical, not usually the case.
I think people have kind of gotten this idea that we're all film critics, but we're not. We are film consumers.
No.
Yeah. To some extent, you guys are film critics. You are on a podcast where you talk about films and you talk about, a wide number of films. But we don't have to go into every single movie with an open mind and without bias. And like I believe a film critic does. But we don't have to, and we don't have to watch every movie. That my fucking New Year's resolution was not. I'm not going to try to watch every movie to say I did. I'm not. I can't live that way where I feel beholden to some crazy entity. Really myself. This idea of I am some kind of completist or some kind of expert. I have a list of movies I want to watch. It's 5,000 movies long, literally. And I always had some shame and annoyance. A lot of these are seminal movies. I'm not going to get to it. I'm going to watch what I want to watch.
Hey, I'm with you, man. I think that's kind of like, part of what this podcast does for me is that it allows me to go in directions I may not typically go in. So then on days where I don't have to do work for this fucking show, this goddamn fucking noose around my neck, I'm gonna watch some dog shit, dumbass fucking Italian huckster fucking horror movie called Jaws 5 because they don't follow copyright laws in Italy, and I'm just like, yeah, let's do it. Oh, the structure is just Star Wars for some reason. Awesome. They used the Star Wars music at one point. Even better. Rot my brain out, please.
That being said, Kenny, I've started to do a little bit more of that myself. I've set the precedent that I'm the one that does homework for this podcast. Typically I watch the Best Picture nominees from every year of the movies that we're talking about. I watch a lot of these other extra ones. And it's gotten to the point where if Tom sees I'm not doing that, he starts to get concerned. Peek behind the curtain for listeners. Last night, I got a text from Tom that was a mix of disappointment and also genuine concern. As though something was
mostly
wrong,
anger.
Which was just a text going, did you watch fucking superhero movie again? The 2008 Zucker superhero parody.
What, did you letterbox it or something?
Yeah,
he did.
I did. Yep, I've watched it twice now. It does not get better. And Kenny, I got news for you. And Tom, I got news for you. It's not going to be the last time I watch it because guess what? I'm going to make Kyle watch it. And Kyle, you got your headphones in now. You can hear me say this. It's going to happen.
Why are we watching a superhero movie?
Because in his poisoned mind, watching the Nickelodeon Kitty Raper documentary, he decided, I need to watch Drake Bell's entire filmography. Let's watch superhero movie.
It was the fact that, yes, obviously, like, he pops up in that documentary, and I was like, right, what happened with that guy? And I remembered he made that movie, and I threw it on because it was on Tubi. And
instead of just saying, he was in that movie and leaving it there.
Wait, here's the other reason. Here's the other reason I watched it. It's because the reason I watched it the one night is I was in here all ready to go, like we were supposed to record the Detour episode. And my partner was out for the night. And Kenny, when you emailed us and you were like, hey guys, can we move this? Fine. But then I was like sitting here in the apartment like, it's just me and the cat. I have nothing to do. So I went on Tubi. I found this film. I'll make it quick and then we'll get to Detour. But I went on Tubi and I found this film. And the reason that I kept watching, Kenny, was it is a fascinating thing insofar as, I've said this before, but it's a fascinating thing insofar as it is a movie from 2008. And obviously, Kenny, you did a whole Patreon about the movies of 2009. It is a movie from 2008 in the style of Airplane that takes the definitive stance, isn't it crazy how obsessed with these superhero movies we used to be? In 2008, the confidence it has to lampoon Fantastic Four, Spider-Man, X-Men, and be like, that's all in the past right now. That's all in the rear view. Parody movies are the thing that's in.
If you asked me when that movie was made, I would have thought mid-2010s for the reasons you're saying.
Right.
Just a little more color. I'm sure every one of your listeners know this. 2008 was Dark Knight and Iron Man.
Correct. Yeah.
So, and 2009 had no real superhero movies of note. I think. But so, that's crazy.
That's like the opposite of Babe Ruth calling his shot.
It's a truly like that's the thing. It's so bizarre, and especially because it's trying to do. Because my partner and I were watching it last night.
He decided to subject her to it.
Yeah, this was basically look. We're not getting into the weeds with this. I don't know how much of this I'll keep in the edit, but basically, she wanted to get chicken wings. She got the highest temperature sauce on the wings, and she's like, "Because I want to challenge myself." I said, "Okay, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna make this a better challenge. I'm gonna find a dog shit movie on Tubi, and I will turn it off when all of those very hot wings are gone."
That's funny.
And as long as they're still there, and I literally, because Tom was, once I explained this to Tom, he's like, Jesus Christ, and I texted him a picture that there was one wing left, and I think he got madder about that. That it was like, there's one. You just this movie's over.
Because we wouldn't have gotten through the first act, and I would have eaten all of the wings. We've done this challenge together.
I would have eaten them with my eyes closed immediately. I don't care how hot they are, because those movies make me physically ill.
I hate it.
Yeah, the Seltzer Friedberg movies. There's something because
this one was the Zuckers. To be fair, this is the Zuckers.
The Zuckers.
Yes, it was. In fact,
maybe they don't make me physically ill. Then maybe it wouldn't, because the Friedberg Seltzer. I think that's their names. The ones that they direct are so visually revolting.
Horrible.
I can't watch them without wanting to throw up.
Now, Kenny, I will say this: there is at least one joke in that movie that, if I know you at all from listening to your podcast and everything, there's one joke I can absolutely see you laughing at because it's so dumb.
I'm sure there is.
It's simply they're doing the Spider-Man lab bit, right, where there's all these animals that are radioactive, and there's like a parakeet. No, it's like a parrot on a pedestal, and so he's got his camera and he goes, "I want to take a picture for the school paper." And off to the side, the scientist goes, "No flash photography. The animals are reactive to it." And he snaps a picture and the flash goes off and the bird just explodes into flame. It's a pretty good bit. It's a pretty funny visual that this bird just bursts into flame.
I just gotta say, it's amazing that Mike managed to find something even more shameful to do when his girlfriend's not home than just masturbate. You could have just jerked off.
No, I had to see it. I had to see where this went. No,
you found something more shameful.
I did, Kenny. I did a double feature of superhero movie and then an American Carol, David Zucker's weird conservative comedy. That's how I know that movie. That's the conservative Zucker, right?
Yes, who made that movie.
That's a bonkers movie. That's just like
that's a weird one.
All right,
but
so let's get
Detour. Real quick. You are right about me that I do like stupid shit. I did spend an entire podcast genuinely talking about how I think Grown Ups 2 is a gonzo masterpiece, which it is.
I would love
the movie. It is one of our finest comedies.
I'm not even joking. Just as a comedy guy, I would genuinely love your response to Superman, if just because it's trying to do like post Superbad raunchy comedy. But it's 2008, and you're like, every single thing you're doing already feels dated and uncomfortable. Every single bit does not land. It's a fascinating
I think maybe it's not superhero. I've seen, I don't remember what they were, but I've seen bits and pieces of a lot of them because you can't kind of miss them. And it was this incredible, like, curio.
Yeah.
Like, these movies are making $80 million? Like, what the fuck? All right, let's go back to a movie that was made for like $80.
So we're gonna
80 pesos, yeah.
So in any event, Detour, which is weird because I think this is one of those things to bring it all back around. You know, we were talking about Tom and the movies he watches when he's not watching movies for this podcast, right? His 10 hats on a mule kind of things.
Yeah.
The fascinating thing about Detour, and this brings back to what you were saying, Kenny, about like, how it sticks out from the pack, is that Detour feels more like the kind of movie Tom would have gotten a Vinegar Syndrome Blu-ray of and swear by than the kind of movie that we typically talk about on this show. It's kind of scrappy.
Well, it feels like a fucking Corman movie.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
It feels like, Corman had 3 days. He had a hotel set or wherever it is they move into for half the movie. And it's just like, all right, shoot a movie in 3 days. We got Tom Neal and the nastiest woman that's ever lived. Make a movie. Okay, guy sleeps so hard that a rainstorm doesn't wake him up, and then he falls on a rock, and a woman gets strangled by a phone cord for some reason. And
So good.
yeah, it's so stupid, but it is good.
He was probably dead beforehand.
He had to have
guy.
been.
Yeah,
he was
probably
out
dead
fucking
beforehand.
cold.
He was popping pills. He's a big fella. And the only stupid part for me, it's not stupid. I don't give a shit. I love it. It's fun. Is that she happened to be the same woman that the bookie had picked up in Louisiana. So in Arizona, the same woman. It's the same woman. But aside from that, everything about it just fucking played.
Here's what's interesting, right? Everything you guys are saying, I agreed with up until very recently. About, well, this is stupid. This doesn't make sense. This is one of those
I don't think
rare
it's stupid.
times.
I think it's wonderful. Sorry.
No, I know, but I'm saying, this is one of those times where legitimately we always do the registry statement, what they say about the film. And I'm glad that, this is the way we're talking about it. The way they talk about the film in the registry statement, which we're about to hear, really did radically shift how I looked at this movie on the most recent rewatch. And once I did it that way, I'm shocked that I feel dumb that I didn't think of this sooner. So with that being said, because I think this is important how they frame this, let's hear what the National Film Registry had to say about Detour.
This ultra-cheap melodrama shot in 6 days by Edgar G. Ulmer has developed cult status as one of the most stylish B pictures ever produced. Hitchhiker Al Roberts, played by Tom Neal, gets mixed up with a femme fatale, played by Anne Savage, who looked like she'd just been thrown off of the crummiest freight train in the world. The story is told in narration addressed directly to the audience, who hears not what happened, but what Al wants us to believe happened. It's hackneyed dialogue, quick and dirty camera work, and shabby no-budget rear projection combined to create a bleak nightmare existence.
Oh my God, it's Lynch.
The narration addressed directly to the audience who hears not what happened, but what Al wants us to believe happened. Truly one of those things where, like, every time I watched this movie, up until
you
that...
are an idiot.
That's what I'm saying. Like, every time I watched it up until that, I'm like, it's just... Because I'm not a... This is the other thing, right? Like I said, up top, I'm not a film noir guy, right? Like, a lot of film noir I have a problem with. Kenny, you talked about, like, your thing with spy movies in Europe, what have you. One of my things with noir is, like, there's great noir, right? And we've talked about them on this show, right? But a lot of the stuff that's noir, especially neo-noir, right? Especially like the Nicholas Winding Refn shit out there and all of that relies on so many cliches. My thing is I can never get into it because my brain always just goes like, oh, this is play pretend time. This just, at a certain point, it just feels like a bunch of like 12-year-olds going like, I got a gun and that girl, she's a sexy dame and we're going to do crimes. And it's like, I don't get into it. And so...
There's nothing wrong with that.
And so I, with Detour, right, and watching it because I'm there, because so often when I watch kind of bad noir and bad neo-noir where it's like, yeah, of course you fucking expect me to, Kenny, like you just said, like the one thing that's hard to, that it's the same girl that got picked up before and, oh, this guy just falls asleep in the rain. And I go, yeah, it's all so improbable. It's nonsense, like it's all just like, come on. And it is this thing of like, once that sentence popped up, I'm like, oh yeah, I don't have to trust what this guy's saying. He just killed those people,
right?
And you
really? You didn't get that?
No, I mean truly, like, because again, like because I think the first time I watched it, I was so kind of sour at that I truly just had that thing of like, I don't know, I guess it's like truly I just was like, man, because I think, Tom, on your letterbox, you made some kind of joke about like, man, this, bad shit just keeps happening to this guy. Like he just keeps stumbling into. It's like it truly like I guess like in my head when I watched it, I kept thinking of that character from Rick and Morty that just goes, "Whoop, there I go killing again." This guy just keeps accidentally stumbling into people dying, and now
it felt like Nordberg on the boat in The Naked Gun,
right?
Just
yeah.
like, oh no, every step of the way, it's just the wrong.
Good thing,
but it's
good
also
thing that's all that Nordberg's remembered for, because that is
yeah. We're always going to remember Nordberg. Not
So
O.J.
good.
Simpson didn't survive the 90s. It's
No, of course.
rest in peace. A true national hero.
Tom, I
just like
always
New Jack said,
he died right after that movie came out. He would be remembered as one of the great comic actors of all time.
It is, yeah. I mean,
now no one talks about it. No one. It's weird, but
no.
I mean, actually, it's not that weird. It's the most straightforward thing in the world.
Right, you're right. It's not weird.
I don't think there's anybody you'd go up to go, can you believe we don't talk about Naked Gun anymore just because of the murders? They go, yeah, no, I truly can believe.
But no, like I feel like there's no way. Like I kind of can't even wrap it around my head that you couldn't watch the movie with that framing, because the two deaths are so silly, and stupid.
But
you have to go like,
but
this guy's lying to us.
We've watched so many. But think about this, Tom. How many Hitchcock movies have we watched? Right? How many like
too
wrong
many.
man? But how many wrong man movies are there out there that have and movies that are considered classics that ask us to just buy into the conceit of like, well, yeah, obviously he's the wrong guy in the wrong place at the wrong time, who just happens to have the exact same hairstyle as a murderer or some shit like that.
No, but like
Well,
because at least in those movies, there's the one central insane buy that you have to make, and they're all so heightened and like cartoonish that you go, okay, this isn't even like going for reality. This is just a like kind of a cartoon. This one, if you straight up just buy what's happening in front of you, it's all so stupid because it's all just so like conveniently just tragic of just, oh no, the guy who picked me up fell on a rock. Oh no, I just so happened to pick up the woman he was driving that scratched him like a mountain lion, aka the worst woman that's been shat into the world. She just so happened to have the telephone wire around her neck as I started ripping at it through the door, and I broke her neck. Oh no. It's just like, come on, man. You killed these fucking people. Like, we're not idiots. I mean, you are, but I'm not.
I think all of this. I think what's kind of lovely about the statement and what you were saying is, the reason I went it's Lynch is I didn't connect it to the idea that, oh, that's also an excuse for why it looks the way it looks.
Yeah.
That's which I never really considered, the idea of explaining away why your shit looks so shitty narratively. I don't think people ever do that, frankly.
No.
And that's pretty cool. And it's, I mean, except Lynch does it, right? Lynch will do it. But aside from that, I think that's pretty cool.
And it's like I was diving into Edgar G. Ulmer, the director of this film, who
great name
and has a wild filmography. Like he started out in Europe. Apparently, this guy, on par with his character almost. Edgar G. Ulmer, consummate liar. Throughout this documentary that's included on the Criterion, there's multiple people just going like, "Yeah, he used to say that. That wasn't true." There's like 5 different birthdays for him. He used to say he was from Vienna. He was born in Czechoslovakia. Like, there's just all kinds of things, including this film where he made up how long it took and the budget that was all false. Anyway, Ulmer comes from Europe, right, and was making documentaries in Germany and was doing Yiddish films for a while. He was working in that field. And then when the war is about to break out, or in 1939, he comes to America, right? Well, he came sooner than 39, but then he went back. He was back and forth. He was always kind of working on the outskirts. But I know Tom and I believe, both have seen one other of his films, which is The Black Cat, the Universal film.
Good movie.
Right, the Universal horror film. Ulmer worked...
Nothing to do with Poe.
No,
it's awesome.
not at
how
all.
Just little it has to do. I love just sidebar, but I just love how at the end of that movie they remember, oh, the name of the movie is The Black Cat. Here's a black cat. And he's just like, this is amazing. I wish more movies would just this shamelessly just like, oh, fuck, we named it this. Explain it 5 minutes before the movie ends.
And it's, in the documentary, they keep saying, Fog was his best friend. Because he would just, if he had fog in the movie, he's like, well, that's set decoration. Right there. That's it. We're done. We're square. But he does that.
Right about that.
He also does, I watched one, he did a Yiddish comedy called American Matchmaker. He worked in race films. He made I think it was a movie called Moon Over Harlem with an all-black cast. He was kind of just doing a little bit of whatever. He was making films whenever he could and however he could. And I think that he's the epitome in a lot of ways, Ulmer. Not that he's talked about like some of the greats. In fact, the ending of the documentary is two actors who had worked with him talking, and one of them remarks to the other. He says, it's a shame. I think he had a great movie in him he never got to make. But at least he was the king of the B pictures. He goes, he was the king of the Bs. And the other actor who's there is John Saxon, who just turns around and goes, there were a lot of king of bees. There's a lot of bees in that beehive. That's it. That's the note. But, what you're saying about, him kind of covering up for the films, is, I think that was the necessity of it. He had this desire to be more than just the B picture guy, and he's working with what he's got, no matter what genre he's working in. And it's fascinating.
Well, that's, kind of where you get some of the best pure filmmaking is when you have to work within limits and you don't have every resource handed to you, available to you. And sometimes, maybe he didn't even know he was doing this. Like Kenny's saying, giving it an excuse for why your movie looks weird and doesn't feel real and everything. Maybe it's just, subconsciously, or just, hey, it's a lucky, happy accident that it works out this way. But, sometimes that's where the best shit comes. And, there's... Maybe he did have a great movie in him if he got the chance. Maybe he could have been like one of those guys, like, he made a B movie and then, like the way we do now, where we yank people out of fucking Sundance and then throw them a Jurassic Park or a Black Panther or whatever. And they either sink or swim. But I think, like we were talking about before, like that it's great that they put this in the registry to kind of say that there is like something worthy about the B picture. I think there is, and I think you do get some of the best filmmaking in this world, and that's why there's freaks like me, the Vinegar Syndrome Severin fucking Blu-ray collectors, because sometimes you're gonna find the shit that is more interesting and more cinematically appealing than Night Swim.
Well, I think
yeah.
Well, to that point, like, because you remember. When we were younger, Tom, and like Grindhouse.
Probably not.
When Grindhouse was coming out, right? The
yeah.
Tarantino Rodriguez thing. And like Tarantino and Rodriguez were guys who really kind of got a lot of film school people and film nerds to go, I'm really into Grindhouse movies, right?
Yeah.
And I remember a professor that we had made the great point. He goes, no, you're not. Because most of those movies are terrible and they're made for people to go in and shoot up heroin. Like, they're not great. What Robert Rodriguez and Quentin Tarantino did was they would be watching these movies on VHS or on cable, and in and amongst all of the not great ones, we're able to look at something like Switchblade Sisters and go, hang on, don't dismiss this. There's some cool shit going on in here. And then take the cool shit out of there, just as they do from the more revered movies. Oh my goodness, of course. Of course. Again, 10 hats for a mule. So they would make something like Switchblade Sisters, and I'd go, oh, hang on, there's something interesting here. And they weren't just copying the aesthetics of Grindhouse movies. They were going like, no, there are genuinely great, potentially great filmmakers working in any space at any budget, rather than kind of going like, I don't care about the mainstream Hollywood stuff.
Well, no, this is the story of almost every interesting director, because almost every interesting director starts with nothing, right? It
Yeah.
starts with a budget of almost nothing. I mean, some are Ron Howard. Actually, Ron Howard started with Corman, so he's not really a great example. I'm just some people start with a name to some extent, and they're able to get some kind of budget. But for the most part, every great director starts with almost nothing and makes something amazing. I mean, from the Sundance people, Coogler, I guess, but really Chloe Zhao is a better example. Um, but also, David Lynch and Todd Haynes and John Waters and all of these people who innovated with nothing. I think that I what I think is so lovely about Detour being included in the registry and us talking about it is kind of that this has always happened. This has happened from the era of silent films where people were pointing movie cameras at things outside of the system, and because of the limitations, they were forced to innovate. Whether that means innovate technically, or innovate with the way they tell stories, which I think is
Yeah.
more interesting to me. The not this idea of we need to be different for the sake of being different, or the sake of standing out, which I think is kind of lame. Which doesn't really speak to art for art's sake, but more, this is the type of story that we can tell with this, as Tom said, one set. There's one hotel room set. What's the best story we can tell in here? Um, that I think is always kind of the
And
at the heart of indie film.
and it's you get more of that in this world, the indie world or the grindhouse world of you're gonna find the weirder,
Basically the same,
more
yeah.
singular stuff. You're gonna find like the singular stuff, the stuff you will find stuff that's weird for weird's sake because it's a world filled with hucksters and fucking mob guys funding bullshit just because they need to, wash their money. But you're gonna get a lot of singular visions because the money is small enough where you don't have fucking accountants looking over your shoulder saying, well, we got to 4-quadrant this and we're going to put it on 3,000 screens and it's going to play to the fucking Mormons in Utah and the fucking Protestants or whatever. And we got to make sure everybody's happy. It's like, no, you got one weird guy from fucking Missouri and 5 of his friends and they've got a cabin in the woods. And, now you got Evil Dead. I should say Michigan, but whatever. I'm a moron, so it's fine. But, and I read Stephen King's book Dance Macabre a week or two ago, and it's about him writing about horror movies, novels, what have you. And there's one line that kind of just is now going to be my go-to when it comes to the B movie world. He said, "The Amityville Horror is a very pedestrian movie, but beer is pretty pedestrian, and it still gets you drunk." That's kind of like, hey, sometimes we forget we kind of just want to be entertained at the movies, and it doesn't matter if it costs $50 or 50 million. Like, as long as it entertains me and it's not fucking Nazi propaganda, I'm not gonna feel bad about it.
Well, and
Yeah.
So
I think with that, when you're mentioning the budget time, I do think, just for the sake of the folks listening and watching, I do want to make sure that we clarify what we're talking about here, because we're talking about indie films, grindhouse films. Neither of those is quite what this is. We've mentioned the term poverty row, right? I just want to, for those checking in, because, this may surprise y'all. Not everyone that's listening or watching this is quite as weird and obsessive as we are. So let's clarify what poverty row is. So poverty row is, it was, basically during the studio era, from the start of the talkies, maybe a little earlier, but let's say the start of the talkies all the way through like the 50s, it wasn't necessarily a specific thing. You'll hear some people kind of attribute it to like a specific area, the same way they do Tin Pan Alley. But it was more the fact that there were these smaller studios that were producing lower budget movies we call B pictures. And, now when we say B movie, we use that to mean like a lesser movie, like a rougher movie. Reality, B pictures just got their name because they were meant to be the second part of a double bill, right? Just, hey, can you crank out a 60-minute thing that we can attach as the second movie of a double feature, right? That was all it existed to do. And as we've discussed on the show, there are other movies that were made into essentially B pictures. Letter from an Unknown Woman, which we talked about earlier this season, was cut down to be on a double bill. Fantasia was meant to be on a double bill after its initial release. So a B picture could mean a lot of things. These studios were doing things like Westerns, particularly Western series, right? Or like I've mentioned before on the show, like The Shadow, The Bowery Boys, my beloved Blondie movie series. These were all produced like on the cheap, to be B movies. So I just wanted to make sure that we note that it's kind of like Detour was made by a studio. It was a smaller studio, right? That was bringing in actors who had acted. This is not like truly indie where it's like, I cast a bunch of my friends and we made it for $10 in the wilderness, like no. I just wanted to make sure I, made that clear. If it's like these actors did do other things, not incredible other things. Tom Neal, who's the lead actor in this, is in Pride of the Yankees. But he just plays like a fellow frat boy and you wouldn't be able to spot him. Anne Savage did a couple things. She was in the Best Picture nominee, The More the Merrier, in a small role. And I was just telling Tom I was watching it earlier today. I evoked the Blondie movies before. Anne Savage is in one of the however many Blondie movies. She's in a movie called Footlight Glamour, which was during a period when they didn't want people to think they had made 18 Blondie movies, so they changed the title. And for the record, I watched Anne Savage in Footlight Glamour. She has a prominent role in that, and she is not at all acting like she does in Detour. So since Detour is such a wild performance, I really wanted to know, was this her thing all the time? Or was this what she was being directed to do? And
that's another thing that makes it so crazy that you didn't realize this was all this guy's bullshit ramblings. Her switch from just getting in his car and just taking a nap to waking up and being the most evil woman that's ever walked the earth is just insane.
Also kind of brilliant, though. Every move she makes is brilliant. I love it.
Oh, she's out of control, and she's one of the best on-screen drunks I've ever seen.
Well, yeah, I mean, to another point, what you're saying, because she is so arch, that does strain credulity. But the other thing is, she's so ahead of him in terms of what she can pull. What her chess game. If she was playing chess, you would have to call in to see if she had the anal beads that were being remote controlled by a friend, so they knew what the other person was trying to do.
She's playing chess. This idiot's playing Hungry Hippos.
and yeah, but of course that's the point is she almost knows things that would be impossible to know because and she's so mean about it.
She's such a bitch. Mean. She's such a bitch.
Mean. No one has ever been this mean in the history of the world.
The fucking the Nazi women in those Nazi werewolf movies were not this mean. She's just vicious.
There's a line. It's on Wikipedia. It's an unbelievable line. They're gonna give you that special perfume they hand out in Arizona to murderers.
Yes, yeah.
That's
jotted
pretty
that
good. I like that one.
I mean,
don't tell me this dialogue is anything less than A+.
It's fucking great shit, man. I mean, and it's so funny too that to watch it from it's him telling his story, and it's just him just being like, yeah, so I'm the dumbest man that's ever lived, and I am outfoxed at every turn by every single person I ever meet, and God hates me, and I'm never gonna be happy again. It's like, okay, that's your story. Great, you're making yourself look awesome, buddy. God, I still can't get over how stupid you are, Mike.
You know what it is? Honestly, because the other thing too is so watching it again, when the guy dies in the car, right? And he dies from rain. And Kenny made the comment, he's like, he died sooner. He was popping pills or whatever, right? I think part of it is every time I get to that part, I'm just like, yeah, right, like Llewyn Davis. Like when Llewyn Davis is in the car with John Goodman and John Goodman dies, and he's like, what do I do now? And in Llewyn Davis, it's like, yeah, this is Greek tragedy, right? Like you watch a Coen Brothers movie, right? And a Coen Brothers movie has a lot of weird circumstantial shit happen, right? Like everybody's accidental death in the lady killers and shit, or like Fargo or anything like that. And those movies absolutely go, yes, I expect you to believe this. I expect you to take all of this at face value, right? So I guess I'm just
within the world of the movie. Of course.
That's the thing.
Well, I think that's.
Yeah.
But it's okay. Like it's okay. I don't know what I'm really trying to say, but yeah, every movie's a dream, right? Every movie is someone telling you a story that they expect you to believe. So it's not that big of a deal that my bigger issue with you, Mike, that was a that you felt that you felt the way you felt, and I don't, frankly, I didn't come down quite as hard as you, Tom, in terms of he murdered everyone. I just was unreliable narrator. But the fact that you didn't think that and you thought that was a problem with the movie, that seems weird to me, right? Because, yeah.
I mean, again, my thing is, I didn't think it was I want to be clear. I didn't think it was a problem with the movie, right? It was more the fact that I was like, right, this is why I don't enjoy these movies. You know what I mean? Like, it's more the fact that, like, I have sat through a number of I have sat through a number of noirs and neo. Like, it's almost like, now Tom acknowledged up top, he's starting to get better with musicals, right?
Almost every noir has this exact same framing device.
Right.
Double Indemnity does.
Yeah,
right?
but Double Indemnity is like, that's, we are meant to believe that what Fred McMurray is saying at the recorder is what happened.
Are we?
Largely. I mean, especially if you get into the James N. Cain novel, that's even more like,
okay,
this is what, because what happens by the end of Double Indemnity, especially in the novel, somebody else just pops up and goes, I heard your recording. Yeah. And also we have evidence that all these things occurred. So, I guess I'm just so used to that. And
he's also not, it's not an alibi that he's putting out there, but still this framing device is very common.
Yeah, I'm not just. I suppose it's just one of those things of like, I'm so used to having to buy into so much of these things, right? That in my head, I was just kind of like, yeah, I guess this is just what I'm supposed to just go along with this. Okay, yeah, this is what happens. Okay, that like, and I also have this thing, and Tom and I have talked about this too. That like, conversely, one thing that Tom and I both complain about a lot with movies is how often modern audiences watch modern films and kind of go, you expect me to believe that ABC, and the response you want to give is, yeah, because it's a movie. Show up and sit down and watch the movie. Like, just go in and let this thing. I think you and I talked about this, Kenny, on your Magnolia episode, right? That my favorite, my favorite part of that is the "but it did happen," which is just it did happen.
Like my foundational statement.
Yeah. So I think that like I'm so far down that Rubicon in some ways that like all of those elements came together. And again, my general kind of not digging, not being the most noir oriented guy, that I was kind of like, yeah, I guess, yeah, this is. I've seen a million noir movies that are like, she walked into my office, she was crying, she said her husband was dead, and when I watch those, I don't go, perhaps there is no woman and the husband isn't dead, because that at certain points becomes such a like pat way to look at movies. We've seen so many articles online that go, have you ever thought the Wizard of Oz is actually just a drug dream? And it's like, yeah, okay, like how many things have we watched like, well, it's actually just a dream. So anyway, that's all to just explain like where I was at with that and with this particular title.
Well, it's also just because like the ending, like the actual ending of him being like, oh, the other guys wanted for the murder of the mean lady, but they also think Al whatever is dead in New York, so I have to wander the land, and I know one day the police will like show up, and then the police just show up, and you're like, okay, well, why are they coming to get you then if you just told me somebody else is wanted for the murder? You're full of shit. Everything we've just heard is bullshit.
That's a good point.
That's so interesting because you know what? When I saw it, Tom, I'm not joking, my first read of that was because it starts with him being such a dick in the diner. right? And just causing a
Yeah.
disturbance in the diner. The first time I saw it, and like I think on a subsequent watch, my read on that, because they keep zooming in on like that song on the stereo, and they include that bit. I mean, the whole thing, the beginning, which I don't know now. I don't know if we're meant to believe that either, that he was a piano player and like that song triggered him, right? He's causing such a disturbance in that diner that I guess my first read on why the cop car shows up is less about like the cop car shows up because, hey, we know you're a murderer, and more about like, oh, you stupid fool. This whole thing has, everything that could go wrong has gone wrong, and because you had to cause a scene in the diner and make a disturbance, you drew attention to yourself. And, it's like the Al Capone tax evasion of it all, right? Like, you dumb bastard. You could have just, because you had to run your mouth and draw attention to yourself. Like, again, that was my read. I'm not saying that's accurate, but like, so that was why the cop car thing stuck out to me, is like, oh, here's one more thing. Is it's like, this cop may not even, like, there's, why I can't think of. Oh, it's like Robert Durst. I mean, I know Robert Durst did kill those people, but it's like Robert Durst stealing the sandwich from the Wegmans. It's like, why? If you just hadn't done that, you probably would have gotten away. Like, and that is kind of, I think that also colors my appreciation of this film is, you do kind of watch it with that silly story, but you're like, it is that thing. Like, yeah, I guess it's like if he could have gotten away, but everything goes wrong for this guy. Anyway, that was my read on the cop car initially when I saw it, was just like, right, that's why he's causing that's why we show him in the diner being a dick in the diner, rather than just having him tell this to you in a hotel room or something, like that's
but
why
again, it's that another thing of to kind of make it that his whole story's bullshit, because it's just like, if you're gonna be if you got 2 murders to your name and you want to be just hiding, wandering around the country where no one's ever gonna find you again, you're that much of a fucking moron that you're gonna just cause a scene like that. So you have to then look at but then you have to look at, but that's what I'm saying. Like, so then you have to look at everything he's telling you not at face value, because we've seen from the jump he's a moron. He doesn't think things through. He's kind of wild and just has a short temper. So why would I believe that he just, some guy, for the goodness of his heart, who's paying for everything, I'll take you to Los Angeles. Oh, I'll give you tips on betting or whatever. He just fell on a rock. And it's like, well, I guess I just have to hide the body and take his money and take his identity now. Like, well, gee willikers, I guess I just have to do that. And then, oh boy, can you believe it? Accidentally strangled that bitch with a telephone wire. You never catch a break. You go, no, I know you did this on purpose, because I seen you fly off the handle because of a fucking song on a radio. You absolute moron. So I don't know. I mean, listen, that's just my read, but then again, I'm not the dumbest person on this podcast, so what do I know?
You're having such fun with this. You've never been happier than this.
I am. This is awesome. This is better than me. This is honestly better than me figuring out Dog Star Man and you pulling out the book and going, that's exactly what Stan Brackett said in this book. And
it was what he was going through at the time. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it's.
See, I'm a smart guy.
Nevertheless,
for a dummy, I'm smart.
Yeah, no, it's. But I do want to get back to a different element of this, right? I do want to get to a different element of this, which is the actual craft of it, right? Because we haven't really touched on that yet. We've alluded to the constraints that he was working in, right? But when you watch it,
a very good-looking movie.
And it does some clever things with its budget. Like showing the passage of time just by, okay, we don't have a huge set. We can't really change the backdrops or anything at the beginning when, Tom Neal, when Al's character is talking to his singer girlfriend. Okay, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to have you walk down the same one sidewalk set that we have, and I'm just going to keep cutting to different street signs. And that's how I'm going to show you that it's different streets.
Yeah.
Like little things like that.
That's a great thing about the movie is that it's not to say that it's a bad looking movie, but you can feel that it's a smaller movie, and yet it never hinders your enjoyment of it. Because there's plenty of times I watch, an indie horror movie, and I'm just like, Jesus fucking Christ! Like, you guys did not know how to use your budget. This is nonsense to watch. I hate all of this. But then you watch something like this, and you go, okay, clearly doesn't have a lot of money, but he's making it work for him.
Well, one of the, I mean, you brought up Corman early on, and I know the reasons you brought up Corman, but there's a classiness to this movie that
Yeah.
you don't see very often. And I
No.
think that the sequence you just talked about with the street signs, it's a very classy way to show the passage of time and that these people are moving. Um, and I thought that was unexpected from what essentially is a B picture.
And I think part of that is, I alluded earlier, like Ulmer did everything. He did Yiddish comedies. He did race films. He did action, crime films. He also did romance. He also did horror, right? I think now when we talk about the B picture, right? B movie has come to define a certain type of movie. It's become synonymous with Grindhouse or what have you. And there are a lot of guys that work in that field who do it because they want to play in the dirt, who do it because they want to do the most gross out, shocking thing. They want to do all of this edgy shit, and the people who weren't, Ulmer was not one of those guys. Ulmer was going to deliver to you one of these crime movies because that's what, that's what people wanted. That's what he wanted to make. But he will also do a horror. He'll also do a romance. And it's not about, I think it's one of those things of watching Detour or watching some of these, better received B movies. They're not just playing into the scrappy movie aesthetic. They're not just. One of the reasons I have such a such a hang up with neo noir is how often they kind of, I feel, just lean on the crutches, right? Lean on like the templates as a crutch, and that happens a lot with horror too. Tom and I talk about it all the time on a number of podcasts, folks in here, is that like, we like different things about horror movies, and Tom is definitely much more of a horror guy than I am, but both of us get absolutely infuriated by the lazy, hacky shit that comes out. Just kind of the like,
this Winnie the Pooh shit.
The Winnie the Pooh Blood and Honey stuff, or the Terrifiers out there, or anything like that. That's just like, it's just posturing, And I think that the reason Detour has what you said, Kenny, the classiness of it is that for all of, Ulmer kind of making this quick and dirty thing and kind of making what they call the quintessential Poverty Row movie, like, he's still trying to make, to treat it with some degree of dignity, I guess. Like, and I think that's...
Well, it's the thing of filmmaking was different at the time. Directors kind of just worked. They kind of just got assignments. There's like, what is it, like 100 John Ford movies that nobody talks about, 100 Howard Hawks movies nobody talks about. So it was a different time. You worked, you got your assignment, you did a thing, blah blah blah. I also think, funnily enough, I think the classy thing that you guys have just talked about, one is because era which it's made, it can't be as sleazy as it could have been under a Corman. But two, I also think it works narratively, because if you think about it, the way smart people do, that it's a guy bullshitting you about what actually happened. It's a guy trying to tell you, oh, I'm not actually a bad guy. All these bad things just kept happening. So he's polishing up his own story to make, because there's hints of some sleaze in here. There's like I don't know, like 40 minutes into the movie where like she's drunk and she kind of grabs at his dick.
Yeah.
She's like, hey, come fuck me. And just like, whoa, okay. And then when she won't, she freaks the fuck out. She's like, oh, blah, 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 sleep on the fucking pull-out bed. And you just like, another one of those things where you just go, okay, there's some sleaze that could have been in here, but for all the reasons I said, that it goes a classier way. But I think this guy, this Al guy, I don't think he's telling me the truth.
No good. Yeah,
no good.
Classy,
Bad fella.
He also has this like classy adjacent job. He's a piano player.
Yeah.
His girlfriend is a lounge singer, but a beautiful lounge singer, and obviously they're working in kind of classy clubs. I think you're dead on, Tom. I think you're dead on. I think he's really I think he's really, what would you say? Something this Rose.
The what?
I don't know. There's like a saying. You're really something the Rose. Something the
You mean
Rose.
Gilding the Lily?
Gilding the Lily. Yes.
Yes.
He's
Okay.
gilding the lily. All right.
I
New
like that
competition
Tom.
for dumbest guy in the podcast.
I like that Tom and I are both sitting going, "Kiss from a Rose" by Seal. Like, what is this?
Guys, I'm impressed you guys got that.
Yeah, we got there. It's
Kenny,
okay.
we listened to you weekly for like 5 years. We should know this.
Yeah. Yes, thank you. And then this is my problem speaking. So,
Well, we're writers. We shouldn't be doing
Yes.
any of this
Yes.
speaking in public. It's a
100%.
bad mistake all three of us have made. You were smart enough to stop doing it for the most part. So
you guys are so generous towards me. If Mike had made that mistake, we would
Hey, you know what,
like,
Kenny? Kenny, can I tell you? I think on any other episode, Tom would have just gone, "Oh, it's weird you didn't pick up on that. I picked up on that on the first time." But and in his mind going, "But there's a guest here. I need to be on good behavior. I need to be." But you're here, so it's like he's gonna ring that bell as many times as he can.
I am your best friend, so this is just this is the way we act.
this is just how good friends act. We shit talk and bully each other.
That's right.
It's great.
We bust balls. That's our thing.
One other thing I wanted to note, too. I mean, I wanted to go. The documentary features like people like Joe Dante and John Landis and all of that talking about Ulmer's work because they obviously watched some of that. That generation of guys, these sort of, I alluded to like the Tarantino, Robert Rodriguez watching the 70s B movies. Obviously, Dante, Landis, those kind of guys were the ones watching the 50s B movies on their TV, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're both talking about it. And hearing them discuss it, it is interesting to think about, like, obviously, like, Dante and Landis kind of work in the genre space as well, but it's interesting to look at Detour and think about how many elements of that pop up in other films you wouldn't even think of with it. Like, the one thing that struck me, so we do that scene where he's in the diner, right? And they light up his eyes. Just his eyes are lit with that slit light. And I'm like, right, this absolutely feels like where Barry Sonnenfeld was like, we're doing this with Morticia and the Addams Family. We're only ever going to light her eyes.
Well, it's like what we were talking about before with the movies that get put in the registry, how there's like the canonical ones we all know. And then there's the ones like this, which is like that quote about the Velvet Underground. Only 10 people listen to the Velvet Underground, but those 10 people all made iconic rock bands.
Yeah, all started bands, yeah.
This is one of those movies that gets in the registry where you never heard of it before until you look at the registry and you go, oh, okay, this is where the entire film brat era of fucking filmmaking in the 60s and 70s got a lot. Like, they took a lot from this. They maybe didn't, remake it straight up, but, like Mike said, they'll pull this shot or this lighting style or this plot beat or this character, and you go, you start seeing the Rosetta Stone and the building blocks come together.
And the thing that's important is,
yeah. Oh, God.
I was just going to say the thing that's important.
I'm going to pivot.
I was going to say the thing that's important is these guys don't just pull it for other noirs. When I complain about the neo noirs, it's because it's guys just aping the style to do more of the same. And what's so smart is these guys take that and go, well, I can put this. John Carpenter basically going, I love westerns. The guy never made a western. But he took elements.
Well, because he was afraid of horses.
Yes. But I'm saying he took elements of his favorite westerns and went, well, how can I apply that to a sci-fi movie? How can I apply that to a cop movie? How can I apply that here? I think that's what's so important.
Well, that gets into the thing you were saying before about, like, there are some directors that do this shit because they actually like it, and there's some guys that are doing it kind of just clout chasing, whatever, and it's the guys that do it, you can tell they're doing it from the heart when it's not these one-to-one lifts. Anytime you watch a Tarantino movie, or I should say, anytime you go back and watch, an Italian Western or horror movie or whatever, any of these B movies from the 60s and 70s, and you can see exactly what Quentin took from it, and you go, wow, how did he get from this movie to this scene in like Kill Bill or whatever? And you go, like, it's not like when Refn just takes like I don't know, like, or I should say like what Saltburn, and you watch Saltburn and you go, oh, so this is the time where he has to pretend.
Yeah.
So they
Well, it's
take
like-
the
and
MGMT song where it's time to pretend.
With Tarantino, you mentioned like he's taking it from
I'm all for an on the nose needle drop. But
he's taking from Italian horror movies and B westerns, but he is also taking from A Girl in Every Port and Gigi and all of that. He's drawing from all these things.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what's so important.
So-
Anyway, Kenny, you're saying.
but ignore the Gigi's and the classy stuff, because the question I want to ask you guys, and this is an existential question to some extent.
That's what you're
your
here
point
for,
about
Kenny.
Dante and-
This is,
Of course, your point about Dante and Landis, watching essentially the 50s B movies, whether at a theater or, at midnight on some local station. Obviously Burton very famously did this kind of stuff, like, this very long tail, these long tail films that wound up influencing their work. Obviously Tarantino, Rodriguez, we've talked about. What is the equivalent now? Because there is no real indie anymore, right? Like there, and by that I mean there's no equivalent of a Grindhouse. There's no equivalent of a B-side or a B film played after. There's no equivalent of the midnight movie, something that's curated. There's the something like Terrifier 2, something like Skinamarink. These are mainstream as far as I'm concerned. The Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, that's a mainstream movie as far as I'm concerned. That movie is written about on every fucking mainstream website, and sub-mainstream, the movies that don't get to that level would get to that level if they were movies that people were talking about. I'm wondering, and I'll throw it out there because I'm wondering if we're talking about things that live on YouTube.
I would counter that only slightly, Kenny, because I was thinking of this before you even said that. They're all on Tubi and on Amazon Prime. They are indie filmmakers. All of the stuff that like people can discover, that
I know what you're saying. I do. I know what you're saying. I know that there are thousands and thousands of movies on these free services. But I do think that there is the lack of curation, even the curation of we're putting this in the Grindhouse this week. We're putting this on the midnight movie this week. Like there are the same group of people are watching the same thing. Where does that you have to watch this one particular $500,000 movie on Tubi conversation happen?
I think there's a lot. Oh, sorry. You want to go, Tom?
Oh, it's the. I'd probably say the closest thing you're getting to that is Shudder, because there is curation. They do pick up a lot of indie movies, even if they're not producing stuff all the time themselves. They do every now and then, but they're mainly a distributor at this point, and there is a strong curation. They have that you've heard all this news recently, like Disney Plus is putting channels in, and Criterion's putting channels in, and you go, all right, well, Shudder was doing that 5 years ago. Shudder has channels where you can just turn it on and be like, what are the curators putting on this channel today? So if you don't even want to go through the stuff and have that, like, God, I don't even know what to pick, I'm just going to put on fucking reality TV or whatever. You can go, oh, well, let's see what's on. So they do that. They have a strong voice where they try to branch out, have enough voices and enough variety within the genre that they are horror specific, but they do enough.
I mean,
we're going to get.
I watch it on Shudder.
I think that's the closest thing.
I mean,
in 10 years,
yeah,
you're going to have filmmakers say, my late night Shudder habit was the most instructive.
I mean, I would count it.
Okay. I'd say I think there's a good chance.
I'm not trying to say that's impossible. I think that's
I think there's a good chance because even like this movie Late Night with the Devil that kind of has been very talked about
that
a
kind
lot.
of became a thing though, yeah.
But like it wasn't really playing everywhere, so like everybody really couldn't see it while the conversation was happening. It's going on Shudder on Friday, so I can see honestly that movie like a 15-year-old whose older brother has a Shudder account and they let them watch Shudder, and they see Late Night with the Devil on Friday or Saturday when it's spring break. I got the guys over. We're watching Shudder. Late Night with the Devil. I could see that kid in like 3 years going to films. He's like, fuck, I want to make movies now. Like that movie did something I've never seen before. It unlocked something in me.
I mean,
I could see it.
I would counter
that.
I would counter with an element though. I think TikTok is hugely important. I mean, YouTube before that and YouTube videos, but like TikTok has been hugely important for helping a lot of things get discovered. I mean, the fact that now when you talk to people, a movie that fucking nobody saw when it came out, like the Poughkeepsie tapes or Lake Mungo, like gets talked about now, even though nobody saw it when it came out. It could have lived and died on fucking Tubi now, but somebody posts a scene of it on TikTok. People are talking about it. The thing you're seeing it right now with, I haven't gotten to see it yet, but I'm hoping to. It is playing out here. Is have you come across Hundreds of Beavers, Kenny?
No.
Okay, you're not much on social media anymore, but Hundreds of Beavers is a comedy film that's done up like a silent movie. Right?
Whoa, that was fun.
Right. And it was a movie that like absolutely was made for like very little money. It had no studio backing at all, right? And it started going viral. Like clips of it on TikTok, people posting about it on Twitter and stuff. And now not only has it gotten a theatrical release in a number of states, and it's getting a Canadian release and all that, but it's available to rent online, right? And the fact of the matter is, these guys like Landis and Dante, yes, part of what got them to watch these movies was whatever their version of Svengoolie or Joe Bob was in the 50s, right? But the other thing, and I say this as somebody whose dad was one of those kids watching all of those monster movies and all of those kaiju movies, right? The other element was you'd go to school and you'd go on the playground or you'd go to the schoolyard, and the other kid who was really into monster movies would go, oh my God, did you see on Channel 9 they played The Invisible Ray? And my dad would go, no, what's The Invisible Ray? Boris Karloff and Bela Lugosi are both in it. And, pre-IMDb is like, that can't be real. And then you remember that. You go and you watch The Invisible Ray when it finally comes on TV again. TikTok and the way that has spread movies, not that it's all great, but TikTok,
I hear what you're saying.
TikTok is the new version of the schoolyard of like, it's not just Shudder is important and Tubi is also important in a much different way.
Yeah.
But either way, it's like, that's the other element of why a Late Night with the Devil gets its due or what have you.
But see, I agree 100% because the people I talk to at my local bar, like the younger people, and I'm like, how did you hear about this movie? Like, you guys don't even like really like aren't as tuned into this shit the way I am. How did you guys hear it? Oh, TikTok. Oh, Twitter. Oh, whatever. But I think that with the question that Kenny's asking is, I think you're not wrong, but I think Shudder and like Tubi are the answers to that, because what Kenny's saying is the guys that are going to go and make the films. Mm-hmm. And when you listen to a Landis or a Dante or a Scorsese or a Quentin talk about what they did when they were kids and watch movies, is they just went and watched whatever was in the theater. And if with Tubi and Shudder being around and having these catalogs of movies that are older, off the beaten path, indie stuff that you're not going to see on Netflix, or Amazon's actually pretty good at this too, so I might actually give them a little bit of credit. They have a pretty wide collection of stuff. But like, but with Shudder, I think more than a Tubi or an Amazon, the curation, like Kenny's saying, where you can at least go in and know that somebody was putting thought into putting this on the service. And yeah, I don't know. I just think like for the people that are going to go on to make movies, they will just go onto Shudder and just watch everything. They'll just like bit and just watch it.
I hope,
But I don't think you're wrong either. I don't think Mike's wrong with what he's saying either.
No, you guys are making arguments that speak to each other. My concern, and maybe this is going to be true for Tubi and Shudder and these places that kind of have these repository of long tail shit, is the people who are making movies now, people under 40, I would say, who are making movies now, don't seem to have those off the beaten path touchstones. In fact, what I always feel like I'm hearing from these people is, oh no, I loved the fucking very great mainstream shit. Like, I'm making my version of Ghostbusters. I'm making my version of Pretty Woman. And obviously, look, I have a Home Alone poster on my wall. I'm not trying to say that I'm, not this, but the sense I get is, and I'm also older than 40, but the sense I get is there is right now a dearth of people who really sought out and learned from the indie auteurs, the actual indie auteurs, who didn't become Baumbach.
That is like a very, I think, a cultural issue. So in the fact that we've kind of been stuck in like an echo chamber of the same references for the last like 30 years at this point. And that's why it's so refreshing when you get a guy like Robert Eggers comes out and he's talking about like, oh, I watched Tarkovsky movies. I watched, Herzog movies. He's not telling you like, oh, I love Star Wars. He'll tell you like, yeah, I was every kid in the 80s. I grew up and Star Wars changed my life, but I watched Tarkovsky and Herzog and this and that. And that's why I make the movies I want to make. So I get where you're coming from, but that's why I think because of all of that echo chamber shit and the fact that this streaming revolution has been going on for so long, but it's been such a broad thing that to have now a service that is a specific thing, like there is no noir app, there is no romantic comedy app, there is no like German expressionist app or whatever. There is a horror app, and it is going to give people that are hungry for this stuff, that grew up watching the same shit, but are like, all right, Night Swim, the Blumhouse stuff that's kind of coming out, who gives a shit? It's all the same. They can now go and find, oh, Shudder put up this Polish horror movie. Shudder put up fucking some of the old Universal horror movies. They put up, a John Waters thing or whatever, and you go, oh, wow, like, I can now watch things that are not the same 5 movies that are always talked about and that are on every other streaming app. So I think 10 years from now, it'll be better. But I get where you're coming from of what we're kind of living in right now is just the end cycle of the same echo chamber we've been living in for a long time.
To me, a little
we're at the third Michael Keaton at this point.
But I would counter to that part of the problem with that, and then we will start winding down because I know, Kenny, you're we want to make sure we respect your time. But the other element of that is that prior to the last like 20 years, 30 years or so, right? Well, let's say 20 years. The last prior to that, film people, right, and filmmakers referencing previous films, lifting things from previous films, lifting things from their Saturday matinee movies or whatever, were just kind of in-jokes for other film people, right? That most people who went to go see Pulp Fiction hadn't seen the movies Pulp Fiction is riffing on or drawing from. Most people going to see Landis movies, other than like the core Universal Monster movies, hadn't seen the movies Landis is riffing on or Dante. What ends up happening, I think, in like the 2000s is everybody gets so postmodern media savvy that when you get that wave, the next wave of guys who are like I'm so look at me, I'm referencing things, the Edgar Wrights, what have you, and all of that, it starts to become a game of I'm going to reference Star Wars and you like that because you also know Star Wars. It's about spotting the references.
It starts to become Ready Player One.
It's it's the difference between like it's the perfect example is I always complain about this but the ending of The Dark Knight Rises where he goes, call me by my real name, Robin. And the whole crowd, no matter whether you've picked up a Batman comic once or not, goes, See, I'm smart because I know that Robin is his sidekick in the comic books. And that kind of a thing where it's like, I think we're dealing with that where, to some degree, where it's now become an idea of like, I'm going to make you feel like you're in on it. I'm going to reference the stuff I'm going to reference Ghostbusters. I'm going to reference all of these things
Oh, I
because
hear what you're saying,
know.
and I think you're making the point I'm trying to make a little
Yeah.
better than I'm making, which is the references seem to come first and seem to come from the most basic, boring places. I don't. Maybe Tarantino put some of those references in as in jokes, or Landis or Dante or whoever, but they really put them in because they worked. I didn't know until I just watched Italian American that, or no, it wasn't Italian American. It was a boy. It was one of the Scorsese shorts that essentially has the story that became Stoltz sticking the, or not Stoltz, Travolta sticking the dagger in Uma Thurman's heart. It's the same exact story. The fact that I know that it came from a Scorsese short means nothing to me, except now I know that Tarantino saw that and it stuck in his brain because it works so perfectly in that film.
Well, yeah, because the references weren't the thing. It was, well, I was I was like 12 when I saw Pulp Fiction for the first time, and I didn't have IMDb or the internet to find all this shit. I just saw it. I was like, wow, that was a good fucking movie. But I can't even fathom the experience.
Yeah,
I couldn't even. I couldn't even fathom the experience of watching fucking Ghostbusters Afterlife or Frozen Empire, having never seen a Ghostbusters movie, because they do not work as movies. They are just reference machines. So I don't. Yeah, it's it's kind of like the Stranger Things effect.
Look, I say this as someone who wrote a movie called Gutenberg, explicitly about Steve Gutenberg, where I reference fucking 15 movies from 1991 or around there that Gutenberg was in, around, or adjacent to. But I didn't pick a single one of them because I was like, wouldn't it be cool to have this in this movie? I picked every single one of them because I felt like this was the right reference at the right time for this moment in this film.
And
it
works. I will say that. It really, you sent it to me years ago. So
yes.
In case you forgot, I didn't hack your computer. I want to be clear. Like you
no.
You consented to me reading that.
Yes, of course.
I wanted to make sure.
Yeah, no, I appreciate
there was at least once I remember going, what, really? There's a reference that happens to a historic. I'm like, oh, interesting. Anyway, so with all that being said,
I mean, so much of it is not true, but so much of it is true. So,
with all of that being said, as we wind down on what I gotta say is, I have to say it. This is exactly what you want from a Kenny Neibart episode.
Oh yeah,
this is exactly we're gonna explore the history of cinema. We're gonna get existential. We love it. We're always happy to have you here.
Thank you guys.
But with all that being said, to wind down, Tom, how do you think Detour fared at the Academy Awards that year?
I think nobody at the Academy saw that movie. And it got 0 nominations.
You would be probably correct. I mean, I don't know if they didn't see it, but it definitely didn't get any nominations. To give you a picture of that year, the Best Picture nominees were Anchors Aweigh, The Bells of St. Mary's, Mildred Pierce, Spellbound, and the winner, The Lost Weekend, which also won the Palme d'Or that year. I think that's interesting to note, if just because obviously, we kept saying Detour is not like most other films. It has a very particular feel. But knowing that, a lot of years, and Tom, you can attest to this, we'll talk about a movie, and when I list the Best Picture nominees, you're like, oh, that's so far removed from this, right? But you could program Detour, since it was a B picture, made for, let's be clear, an unclear amount of money for an unclear number of days, because Ulmer said it was made in 6 days. He also said it was made in 12. He also said it was made in 18. They fudged a lot of numbers. But I say all that to say, as a B picture, Detour would work on a double bill with Mildred Pierce or Spellbound or The Lost Weekend. So I think that's super interesting.
Well, it would outshine Spellbound because Spellbound fucking sucks.
I mean, I also want to be clear. I would love this to be on a double bill with The Bells of St. Mary's. You just wrapped up watching Bing Crosby as a priest going, "Oh, I fixed your church." Next thing you know, it's just Tom Neal killing people.
Well, shit. Corman used to do shit like that, man. Yeah. He would get he would import a fucking Bergman movie and then pair it up with whatever dipshit swords and sorcery movie he had out, and it would kill in fucking Arkansas.
Well, thank you. I just want to note, Kenny, thank you so much for joining us once again. I really appreciate it. I think
this is always a highlight of every season for me because my best friend gets to come on the show.
And I'm so glad we got to talk. I'm so glad we got to talk about Detour and also talk around Detour. Truly, nothing is more fitting for this style of episode where we're going to talk about everything from Shudder to superhero movie. Nothing is more fitting for a movie literally called Detour. So couldn't have asked for anything more. Kenny,
we knew this was coming.
Kenny, do you have anything you want to plug in these final moments? I know you're not on social media anymore. Do you have anything you want to throw any plugs for?
No.
Okay. Great. So if folks want to hear more from you, they should just wait until next season, I guess.
Yeah, you can always listen to the back episodes of podcasts like it's 1999 if you want. You can listen to podcasts like it's 1992, hosted by my friends Phil Iskov and Emily St. James. I will be on that podcast sometime soon talking about one of my favorite films, Digstown.
Ooh. Well, yeah. So, you know what? While I'm at it, you said listen to the back catalog of 99. Kenny, I hate to put you on the spot, but for folks listening who maybe haven't listened to it,
on the spot.
If you had to pick one or two 99 episodes, now from 30,000 feet, having done them all, pick one or two that you wanted to direct folks to seek out. Which ones would you tell them to listen to?
Shit, I don't know. I mean, I spoke too soon because I do like being put on the spot. But which ones would, I mean, to me, the episodes I had the most fun with every year were the 52 in review. Mm-hmm. I loved doing those. If you're not going to sit and listen, I would start with the last episode. I would start with the last episode where we talk about the entire podcast. And then, unfortunately, we did Eyes Wide Shut first. So we were very dumb and new with that movie. We did Talented Mr. Ripley very early on. So some of the classics we did really early.
Deep Blue Sea early on,
as
we all recall.
Deep Blue Sea, of course. Wild Wild West was our second episode. But yeah, no, I think the last episode is the episode I am probably most proud of, that and Magnolia. But Magnolia, I would imagine, is unlistenable too. So.
By the way, Kenny, I'm not going to tell you you're wrong, but the correct answer was people should listen to Pokemon, the first movie, and Universal Soldier, the Return. Those are the real cherry episodes of that podcast.
Those were good. I mean, my favorite episodes are the ones where I really am mean to Phil. So, I mentioned
Thomas Crown Affair.
Both of them. Not that. I recently apologized to him for that one, but. I mentioned that we discussed it before we got on mic, but I truly, truly love the Simply Irresistible episode because I think Simply Irresistible is a low-key masterpiece. And I also love the Topsy Turvy episode because I am the only person in maybe the world who's willing to call out the that movie. There's no there there. There is absolutely no there there. I don't know what that film was about. And I may have just lost listeners or friends or whatever, but truly, I do not understand the cult of that film.
Well, Kenny, thank you so much for being here. We look forward to hearing what films cults you dispel next season. But everybody else, stick around. We'll be right back with our picks for the National Film Registry.
The National Film Registry isn't some fixed object, frozen in time. It's always growing, adding new titles every year. These annual selections are made by the National Film Preservation Board, with members like Martin Scorsese, Alfre Woodard, and Leonard Maltin, and representatives from organizations like the Academy, the DGA, and the AFI coming together to debate and decide. But they don't just pull titles out of thin air. They pull from the public, people like you and us, who can submit their nominations for the registry in a form on the Library of Congress's website. What we do, at the end of each episode, is have Mike and Tom pick films not yet in the registry that they feel should be, inspired by that day's topic. At the end of each season, those films will be formally submitted to the National Film Registry for consideration on behalf of You're Missing Out. Here are today's picks.
There are a lot of ways to go with this movie. Take a shot. We say that all the fucking time. But yeah, there are a lot of ways to go with this movie. So I don't know why my mind quickly went to this one, but I guess I was just thinking about the stripped down genre, like pulp narrative thing that Detour is going for. Very stripped down, very indie, like we talk in the show. It's, maybe not necessarily indie, but the spirit is essentially the same. Cheap movie genre, not very overly elaborate, complicated, very straight and to the point. And my mind went to Blue Ruin by Jeremy Saulnier. One of the best movies of the 2010s. It was eligible last year, so it's eligible this year, so it's still fresh in the pot. I just thought what Jeremy Saulnier did with that movie was just masterful work. Stripping down the revenge movie to its barest and saddest elements that a lot of revenge movies tend to ignore. That it's, a lot of movies like to pay lip service to, violence is a cycle, it just begets itself, but they kind of try to have their cake and eat it too and make it like, Death Wish 3 or whatever, where it's still just like, yeah, but it's cool when he kills the bad guys and everything's great and nothing's fun, people forget the original Death Wish was like, but that's a tale for another time. But this movie really does just get to the brutal, horrible impact of violence, not just on the victims, but on the perpetrator of the violence himself, of being a victim of violence and what that does to you, and being pushed to such a place where you want to now enact violence for the violence that was enacted upon you and your loved ones. I think it's brilliant, masterful. It's clearly a small independent movie. When you watch it, you can tell like they didn't have a lot of money. They were using the resources they had, but like Detour, they knew how to use their resources to get the most bang for their buck. And I think, like I said, it's one of the best movies of the 2010s. I think Saulnier is one of our most exciting guys. Like we were talking about with Kenny towards the end of the episode, I think he's one of those guys that people need to be talking about more as really trying to push cinema forward instead of just rinsing and repeating the same ideas. I thought, his follow-up Green Room was another masterpiece. The Netflix movie he did, I always forget the title because it's just one of those titles that's like, is it Across the Dark? Is it Hold the Dark? Something like that. But that movie he did with Netflix with Jeffrey Wright and Alexander Skarsgård is also really fucking good. Need another movie from that man soon. We would have, but John Boyega's an asshole, so it's going to take a little longer for that. But Blue Ruin is a masterpiece. It would do very well as the B movie to this B movie in a double feature. Check it out if you haven't seen it.
I mean, of course, Tom is going to pick a violent 2010s revenge movie as his registry pick, so I guess it's time for me to go in a totally different direction here than a 2010s violent revenge movie. So, I was thinking about Detour, and I was thinking about the fact that Detour is the kind of movie that it was very scrappy and unassuming when it was coming out. And we also stress it's not a total indie movie. It's a Poverty Row picture, right? It's the kind of thing that, today would be the equivalent of like a movie that's like on the bubble of being direct to video, right? And it's a movie that on the surface is unassuming. And I think if you see the trailer, you probably go, I've seen a million movies like this. But it ends up doing something really special, and it ends up being something that does such interesting things, visually, storytelling-wise, that even though it was tiny and unassuming, it ends up having reverberations that shake up cinema. You can't talk about film history without talking about Detour, right? Even though, again, at the time, or even if you watch it now in the background, like I did on my phone the first time years and years and years ago, it's easy to write it off as, I've seen a million movies like this. There was a movie just like that, not just for me, but for the world, and it's hard to remember that was the case. Now, not only has its reverberations been so felt, we are still in the middle of people ripping it off, but it itself has had such success financially and culturally in a way that Detour did not in its immediacy, that it's hard to remember that in 2014, when the trailers were running, no one gave a good goddamn about John Wick. I am one of those people. The only reason I went to see John Wick, a movie that, when I saw the trailers, looked like yet another Keanu low-budget action movie. I only went to see it because I was having a bad night and I needed to get out of the house and I needed something to occupy my mind at 11 p.m. I saw John Wick under the same circumstances most people saw Detour, which is I need to go into a movie theater just to decompress. And I saw something that is a game changer, fundamentally. You know, obviously this is the first year that movie is eligible for the registry, and I know it's not going to get it on its first year. It's not one of those. You know, it's not a, it's not a first ballot for, the registry types, but it is a movie that will eventually have its place because it's just an undeniable part of our film culture now, and a movie that came out of nowhere. And similar to Detour, the best films that steal from John Wick are the ones who look at what it did and were like, okay, I'm going to do something interesting like they're doing. I'm going to try some of the visual tricks they're doing. And the worst movies to come out of that wave are the ones who are just trying to imitate it, or the ones who are taking it way too seriously. It's, we talked about it with Detour. The Detour is that kind of perfect mix of like really smart and a little classy and also knowing it's kind of dopey and just having fun. And John Wick, the original film, strikes that balance so well. So never in a million years did I think I would be the one on this show going to bat for first year induction of John Wick, but it just felt so appropriate with this. And I think, so analogous in a lot of ways. So yeah, the 2010s violent revenge film, John Wick, should have a place in the National Film Registry.
Next week,
nothing, because we're taking a week off for Memorial Day, but in 2 weeks we'll be back with The Bank Dick with Ryan Luis Rodriguez.
You're Missing Out is a production of Neon Night Media. It's hosted by Mike Natali and Tom Lorenzo. The show is produced by Kaya Lampar and edited by Mike Natali and Kaya Lampar. More information about our hosts and guests are in the show notes. Thank you to Amanda Rush for our social media, and all of you for checking us out.
If you're listening right now or want to take the show on the go, every episode is available as an audio podcast. Follow You're Missing Out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you like what you hear, please leave a review and a rating. It helps folks find the show.
Want to watch the show or watch some of the films along with us? Great, that's why we're doing this. Don't leave us alone out here. Check out our YouTube channel. We've got video versions of every episode, uploads of some of the National Film Registry titles we're discussing, commentary tracks, and live streams. And once a month, I'll be uploading some content that's exclusive to the YouTube channel. So be sure to click subscribe and hit that little bell to be notified as soon as new stuff goes up. Because, let's be fucking real, I ain't sticking to a goddamn schedule.
So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
And we'll see you next time.
And you'll see us next time, because we don't watch you, you're watching us.